Hello, esteemed gentlemen. God doesn't send storms to drown Sigma males. He sends them to prove they can walk on water when no one's watching. Let's be clear. If you're a Sigma male, life hasn't just challenged you. It's tried to break you in secret. While everyone else seems to get their blessings with hashtags and applause, you've been stuck in a cycle of divine silence, repeated betrayals, closed doors, and what feels like a spiritual escape room with no exit. And here's the kicker. You're not cursed. You're being calibrated. Fact, studies in behavioral psychology show that highly independent thinkers like Sigma males are more prone to existential crises and long periods of isolation. But what science calls a crisis, God often calls training ground. Because unlike the rest of the world, your life isn't being built for comfort. It's being weaponized for purpose. While others chase validation, you're being stripped of yours. While they chase platforms, you're being hidden. And while they confuse elevation with exposure, God's making sure yours is unforgeable. And honestly, you've probably asked, why me? Why does God keep dragging me through fire like I'm some kind of divine science project? The answer is deeper than most people can handle. But in this video, we're going all in, with brutal honesty, zero cliches, and maybe a few moments that make you laugh at the absurdity of being God's secret weapon with no user manual. Strap in, because once you understand why you're being tested, you'll stop begging for peace and start preparing for the throne. Number 1, they must be able to walk among demons without falling into lust with the darkness. Sigma males are the kind of men who get sent into rooms most people wouldn't survive. They're not made for safe spaces, they're made for dangerous assignments. And one of the most intense tests they face, before God elevates them, is learning how to walk among demons without falling in love with the darkness. It's not a metaphor, it's real. When you're called to be the exception, you will be exposed to everything that has the power to corrupt you. Power, lust, ego, manipulation, access, luxury, lies wrapped in beauty. God doesn't hide those things from you. He puts them right in front of you and watches what you choose. Most men break under that pressure. They start off with noble intentions, but the spotlight seduces them. The money whispers. The wrong people clap. Suddenly their mission becomes a performance. Their purpose gets hijacked by comfort. Sigma males are tested differently. God places them in environments where truth is rare and temptation is normal. Not to destroy them, but to see if they can hold the line when no one's watching and everything looks delicious. You'll meet people who seem powerful, but are hollow. You'll get offers that look like shortcuts, but are spiritual traps. And the scariest part? The test doesn't come labeled. It arrives disguised as everything you ever wanted. That's why so many fail. They think the test is about endurance, but it's really about discernment. Can you recognize that what glitters might be poison? Can you say no when everyone else would kill to say yes? God keeps Sigma males in these environments longer than most, because He's not just testing their loyalty, He's testing their appetite. If you still crave what's corrupt, He can't elevate you. Not because you're weak, but because you're not clean enough to carry what's next. You'll be walking into rooms where others have sold their souls just to be invited. If you're going to stand out, you better be untouchable. That's why the test feels endless. But once you stop flirting with the darkness and start mastering your resistance, that's when everything changes. Because now, God knows you won't become the very thing you were sent to destroy. Number 2, because they'll be given keys. Others would abuse. Sigma males aren't just being prepared for status or recognition. They're being trusted with access to rooms, to minds, to systems most people will never even know exist. These aren't the flashy keys that open doors to cars or clubs. These are the kinds of keys that open people's blind spots, unlock hidden truths, and dismantle entire power structures. And here's the danger. If those keys fall into the wrong hands, they don't build, they corrupt. That's why God doesn't hand them over until He's sure the Sigma male won't use them for ego, revenge, or domination. The average person wants influence to feel important. But Sigma males are wired differently. They don't crave the spotlight, they crave clarity. Still, that doesn't mean they're immune to temptation. That's why the testing phase is brutal. God has to make sure the Sigma male won't exploit what he knows. Because once you're trusted with influence behind the curtain, real high-stakes influence, what you choose to do with it determines everything. You'll be in situations where you know exactly how to manipulate someone. You'll see all the emotional weak spots, all the intellectual flaws, all the societal loopholes, and you'll have the power to exploit them with surgical precision. And that's the trap. Will you use that insight to elevate others, or to elevate yourself? God tests Sigma males with power disguised as struggle. He lets them taste betrayal, isolation, and rejection, not as punishment, but to strip their motives down to the bone. He has to be certain that once the keys are handed over, they won't be used to open vaults of chaos or vengeance. Because with those keys, you can either lead or deceive, heal or manipulate, create order or unleash calculated hell. This is why the waiting feels endless. You're not being punished, you're being evaluated. God's asking, can I trust you with power no one else will see, with access no one else will understand, and with the ability to reshape things quietly from the shadows without becoming addicted to the control it gives you? Until the answer is yes, the keys stay locked. Number 3. They're meant to trigger transformation, not comfort zones. Sigma males were never designed to blend in. They were built to disturb the system, not adapt to it. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Even the strongest minds crave comfort in the early stages. Belonging feels good. Recognition feels safe. Approval feels validating. That's exactly why God doesn't elevate Sigma males when they're still secretly addicted to any of those things. Because if they rise too soon, they'll adjust themselves to fit the room instead of rebuilding the room itself. When a Sigma still needs validation, he plays small in subtle ways. He edits his truth, softens his message, dims his instincts. And once that happens, the system has already won. He's no longer a threat, he's just another intelligent man silenced by the need to be liked. God knows this. That's why the test is so isolating. It burns away the need for approval like fire on dead wood. It strips the Sigma male of every comfort zone until he becomes completely immune to groupthink, social pressure, and emotional bribery. God doesn't want Sigma males to be accepted. He wants them to be undeniable. That only happens after long seasons of rejection, of being misunderstood, of being framed as difficult or too intense or not a team player. These aren't setbacks. They're surgical extractions. God is removing every trace of conformity before giving him influence. Because the moment a Sigma gets comfortable, he loses the sharp edge that made him necessary in the first place. You don't send a revolutionary into the world while he's still worried about offending people. You don't elevate a disruptor who still needs the system's permission. You wait until he's mentally allergic to mediocrity, until comfort disgusts him, until he realizes he's not here to belong. He's here to break patterns, shake foundations, and force change where no one else could. That's why God waits. That's why the tests are relentless. Because when the time finally comes, that Sigma male won't adjust to his environment. He'll alter the environment entirely. Number 4. They must be unshakable when the applause stops. Most people are secretly addicted to praise, even the ones who pretend they're not. They perform just a little better when someone's watching. They speak a little louder when there's applause. But Sigma males are being built for a different kind of power, the kind that survives silence. That's why one of the deepest tests they face is this. Can you keep going when no one's clapping? It's easy to stay motivated when you're being recognized, reposted, admired, validated. But what happens when the likes vanish? When the crowd moves on? When the work you do echoes into a void with no response? That's where most men crumble. They slow down, second-guess themselves, or worse, start chasing attention just to feel alive again. That's performative energy. And God won't elevate a Sigma male until that addiction to being seen is fully destroyed. So he sends silence, long stretches of it, deafening, soul-stretching silence. Projects flop, ideas get ignored, loyalty gets tested. And during this phase, the Sigma is forced to ask himself, who am I when no one's cheering? If the answer is still a man on a mission, then he's getting close to elevation. But if he starts bending his path just to earn claps, the test resets. God wants Sigma males to become internally self-fueled, like a machine that runs on conviction instead of compliments. Because the truth is, once you reach real influence, the applause becomes conditional. People will only clap as long as you say what they like. The moment you disrupt them, challenge them, lead them into uncomfortable truth, they'll turn on you. The praise will dry up. The silence will return. And if you're not built for that, you'll sell out for approval and call it strategy. That's why God doesn't elevate Sigma males when they're still feeding off recognition. He waits until they've made peace with being invisible, until their consistency has nothing to do with who's watching, until silence no longer feels like punishment, but like confirmation. That's when they become dangerous. That's when God steps in. Because now he knows, this man doesn't need applause to act. He just needs a reason. Number 5. They're being prepared for environments where integrity is an extinction trait. Sigma males aren't being trained for safe spaces. They're being prepared for war zones of influence. Not the kind with bullets, but the kind with billion-dollar smiles, whispered betrayals, and contracts signed in spiritual blood. God knows where he's sending them, into environments where integrity is rare and compromise is currency. Places where lies are dressed in luxury, corruption is applauded, and people sell their souls just to climb one more rung on a crumbling ladder. That's why the test is brutal. Because Sigma males will eventually be placed in positions where doing the right thing could cost them everything. Their reputation, their relationships, their resources. And before God puts them in those rooms, he has to know one thing. Can they stay clean in a system built to make them dirty? Most people fold in these environments. They start off noble, then slowly trade honesty for access, loyalty for convenience, and truth for popularity. They justify it. They call it strategy. But really, they've just adapted to survive. Sigma males can't afford to survive that way. They're not being elevated to blend in. They're being positioned to expose and dismantle. That only works if their integrity is unbreakable. So God tests them early. He puts them in smaller but equally filthy situations. Jobs where everyone's fake. Relationships where manipulation is masked as love. Systems where cutting corners gets rewarded. And he watches. Will they bend to fit in, or will they bleed to stay honest? It's not just about moral strength. It's about spiritual readiness. Because once you're in those high places, the pressure is relentless. You'll be offered every temptation. People will tempt you with things you didn't even know you wanted. And everyone around you will be doing it, justifying it, normalizing it. If you're not trained to stand alone, you'll get swallowed. God doesn't elevate Sigma males as a reward. He does it because those dark rooms need one man who can't be bought, can't be bent, and can't be broken. But he'll only trust you with that mission if you've proven you can walk through corruption and not let it rub off on your soul. Integrity isn't optional where you're going. It's your only weapon. Number 6. They're meant to break cycles, not repeat patterns. Most men don't realize they're trapped in someone else's script. They're born into a pattern: emotional repression, fear of failure, toxic masculinity, people-pleasing, generational poverty, broken relationships, and they just play the role handed to them, no questions asked. Sigma males, on the other hand, are wired to feel the dysfunction. They see through it early, but recognizing the pattern is only the beginning. Breaking it is the war. And that's why their tests are brutal. Because God didn't build them to repeat cycles. He built them to end them. But you can't break a system you're still emotionally loyal to. That's why Sigma males go through deep, painful isolation. They're pulled away from family dynamics, from cultural expectations, from anything that still has a grip on their behavior. God isn't trying to separate them out of cruelty. He's extracting them like a surgeon removing a deeply embedded toxin. Because if that inherited dysfunction still lives in their reactions, in their mindset, or in how they handle power, then the elevation becomes dangerous. Most people don't even know they're living out someone else's wound. Their anger isn't theirs. Their fear was inherited. Their silence is generational. Sigma males are forced to face this truth in ways that feel personal, but are actually ancestral. God lets them confront betrayal so they learn boundaries. He lets them face abandonment so they stop chasing fake connections. He lets them feel the weight of being misunderstood, so they stop depending on others to define them, because once a Sigma breaks the pattern, he becomes the blueprint. He becomes the man that future generations reference, not repeat. But that only happens after the inner warfare, the kind where you're not fighting other people, but the version of yourself that was programmed by pain you didn't even cause. God won't elevate a man who's still loyal to the dysfunction that broke him. Not because that man's weak, but because he's still programmable, still triggerable, still vulnerable to the very cycles he's meant to destroy. The testing burns all that out, slowly, painfully, completely. And when it's done, what's left is a Sigma male who no longer plays inherited roles. He writes new ones, for himself and for everyone who comes after him. Number 7, because their future enemies are ruthless, not average. The enemies of a Sigma male aren't average. They're not random haters on social media or petty rivals at work. They're systems, movements, institutions, people with reach, power, and no conscience. And that's why the preparation phase is intense, because you can't send a disruptor into global arenas with a fragile spirit. God knows this. That's why Sigma males are allowed to taste betrayal early, to experience spiritual warfare before anyone knows their name, to survive psychological attacks when there's nothing to gain from it except resilience. This isn't paranoia, it's calibration. Sigma males aren't being prepared for fair fights. They're being prepped for battlefields where the rules don't exist, where people smile and sabotage you in the same breath, where truth threatens billion-dollar narratives, where one wrong move can get you erased socially, politically, or spiritually. Most people can't handle that pressure. That's why God doesn't even consider elevating Sigma males until they've been thoroughly tested in the shadows. Betrayal isn't random, it's strategy. When a friend stabs you in the back early in life, it hurts like hell, but it's also a warning shot. God is showing you how disloyalty wears a mask. When you're lied to, ghosted, used, underestimated, it's not just pain, it's training. He's building your instinct, teaching you to read energy, not words, faces, not titles, patterns, not promises. Because later, when you're dealing with global influence or systemic corruption, you won't have time to figure out who's real. You'll need that built-in detection system to be flawless. And then there's the spiritual side, the attacks that make no sense, the nights you can't sleep, the sudden depression, the silence from God. That's not bad luck, that's warfare. God allows it so you learn to stand up even when you don't understand. Because when you're global, when your voice threatens empires, you'll be hit with psychological games and spiritual sabotage that would destroy the average man. But you won't be average because you were forged in betrayal, hardened by isolation, trained by fire, and now you won't flinch, you won't beg for peace. You'll recognize the war and walk into it like a man who was built to burn down the fake and rebuild what matters. Number 8, they need to develop strategic mercy. Sigma males are naturally wired to be fierce, independent, and unrelenting. Their strength often comes from their refusal to tolerate weakness, whether in themselves, in others, or in the systems they encounter. But without being tested, that fire can burn too hot, too fast, and too destructively. If God elevated Sigma males too soon, they might become merciless wrecking balls, tearing down everything in their path without care for what's left behind. That's why these tests are crucial. They're not just about building power, but about cultivating what I call strategic mercy. Strategic mercy isn't weakness. It's not about letting people off the hook because it's easy or convenient. It's about having the emotional intelligence to know when to hold the line, when to step back, and when to rebuild instead of destroy. God wants Sigma males to develop the wisdom to dismantle toxic systems without becoming toxic themselves. He wants them to be ruthless enough to break what needs breaking, but wise enough to create something stronger and healthier after the dust settles. The tests push Sigma males into situations where their natural instincts might scream, "Crush it," but they're forced to pause, reflect, and choose a better response. These moments are painful because they challenge pride, impatience, and the desire for quick wins. But through this pain, Sigma males learn that true power isn't just about destruction, it's about transformation. Without this development, a Sigma male's rise can become a cycle of burning bridges and leaving chaos. With it, he becomes a leader who commands respect not through fear, but through balanced strength. The emotional intelligence gained from these tests equips him to know when to fight, when to forgive, and when to build alliances that last. God doesn't just want a warrior. He wants a kingmaker, someone who can wield power with precision, empathy, and vision. That's why the journey of the Sigma male is never just about strength. It's about growing into a man who can destroy weak systems without becoming weak himself, and who can rebuild better ones with strategic mercy as his foundation. Number 9. They're meant to be ghost kings, not court entertainers. God doesn't elevate Sigma males to bask in the spotlight or play to the crowd. The world is full of court entertainers, those hungry for applause, desperate for likes, and addicted to being seen. But Sigma males, they're forged to be ghost kings, invisible forces that move entire kingdoms without ever stepping onto the stage. That's why the journey isn't about flashy success or viral fame. It's about being hidden, tested, and refined until external validation becomes meaningless. God keeps Sigma males in the shadows because real power doesn't need an audience. It doesn't crave approval or feed off attention. When you're unseen, you're unbreakable. You're not a puppet dangling from public opinion or social trends. You're a silent storm brewing beneath the surface, capable of reshaping everything without anyone realizing it until the ground has already shifted. This invisibility is a test itself. Most men panic when they're ignored or forgotten. They chase visibility like it's oxygen, but Sigma males learn to thrive without it. They become comfortable being ghosted, overlooked, and underestimated because they know that true influence is built in silence, not spectacle. God's goal is to kill the addiction to external validation so completely that the Sigma male becomes untouchable by manipulation. You can't control a man who doesn't need your approval. You can't distract him with praise or pull him down with criticism because his worth isn't tied to anyone else's gaze. In this hidden state, the Sigma male grows sharper, stronger, and more focused. The world may never fully see him, but that's the point. His power is stealthy, strategic, and unstoppable. He's not here to entertain crowds or win popularity contests. He's here to quietly rewrite the rules, move unseen pieces on the board, and reign without ever needing to be seen. God doesn't elevate Sigma males to be idols. He elevates them to be ghost kings, silent, sovereign, and utterly unshakable. Number 10. Because their rise must be uncopyable. Sigma males don't get handed step-by-step guides or neat roadmaps. They aren't built to follow in anyone's footsteps because their rise is meant to be unrepeatable, uncopyable, and unmatched. God intentionally delays their elevation, not to punish them, but to ensure their journey is so unique and forged in such fierce solitude that no one else can replicate it. This isn't about playing by the rules, it's about becoming the rule. Most people want a formula for success, a proven method they can plug into and watch results. But Sigma males don't operate that way. Their growth is messy, non-linear, and deeply personal. They are forged in silence, betrayal, spiritual warfare, and relentless inner battles. No one else can take that path because it's tied to their exact combination of wounds, wisdom, and willpower. God's delay is a deliberate act of protecting their uniqueness. Elevating them too early would mean handing over a copy-paste success story, one easily mimicked and therefore diluted. But when the Sigma male finally rises, there's no blueprint to follow. There's only presence, a magnetic energy, an undeniable force born from a life no one else could live. This presence makes Sigma males unpredictable and dangerous to systems built on predictability and control. Others can try to imitate surface traits, style, speech, attitude, but they'll always fall short because the Sigma's power isn't in the act. It's in the authenticity and the raw, battle-tested story behind it. God's test isn't just about survival, it's about authentic becoming. He waits until the Sigma male's rise is a singular event, one that can't be duplicated or stolen. It's why their elevation feels like lightning in a storm, sudden, fierce, and impossible to forecast. When Sigma males finally step into their power, they don't just lead, they redefine leadership itself. They don't follow trends, they create them. And that uncopyable rise? That's their greatest weapon and their ultimate freedom. Number 11, they must become immune to emotional blackmail. Sigma males are naturally magnetic to those who seek control through emotional manipulation. These manipulators don't always come wearing obvious masks. They can be lovers whispering guilt, mentors cloaked in concern, or family members wrapped in obligation. The tests God puts Sigma males through aren't just random hardships. They're training grounds for spotting the most subtle, venomous forms of emotional warfare. The world is full of people who weaponize love, loyalty, and care to trap others in invisible chains, and Sigma males must learn to see through these disguises before they rise. God doesn't elevate a Sigma male until he becomes immune to emotional blackmail, until the moment someone tries to pull on his heartstrings, disguised as worry or duty, and he doesn't flinch. He doesn't get sucked into guilt trips or manipulated by veiled threats. Instead, he recognizes these tactics for what they are, attempts to control and weaken him. The test is brutal because emotional blackmail is one of the hardest battles. It's invisible, personal, and cuts deep. But God knows a Sigma male who gives into it becomes a prisoner of his own empathy, vulnerable to being bent, broken, or distracted from his purpose. This immunity isn't about becoming cold or heartless. It's about developing razor-sharp emotional intelligence and boundaries so strong that toxic influence bounces off like water on steel. It means understanding that sometimes walking away is the ultimate act of love, both for himself and for the people involved. It means realizing that manipulation hidden as care is not love, it's control. Through repeated tests, betrayals, false accusations, guilt-laden conversations, God trains Sigma males to protect their inner fortress. He forces them to trust their instincts over words and to prioritize their mental sovereignty over external pressures. When a Sigma male finally masters this, he's no longer a puppet dangling from others' emotional strings. He's a man who can navigate relationships without losing himself, who can say no without guilt, and who moves through life free from the invisible chains most people never even notice. This emotional immunity is a cornerstone of true power, because you can't lead, disrupt, or elevate if you're constantly fighting wars in your own heart disguised as love. Number 12, they're being trained to endure fame without needing it. Fame is one of the most deceptive traps life can set, especially for those destined to lead from the shadows like Sigma males. It looks glamorous from the outside, the applause, the recognition, the seemingly endless validation. But beneath that surface lies a subtle, cruel illusion. The more you crave the spotlight, the more the spotlight owns you. God understands this better than anyone, which is why he purposely lets Sigma males be ignored, overlooked, and even mocked for long stretches. This isn't punishment, it's preparation. By keeping them in the shadows, God is teaching Sigma males a rare kind of freedom, the ability to endure fame without needing it. When the world finally turns its eyes toward them, and it will, they won't become prisoners of public opinion or addicted to applause. They won't build their identity around fleeting validation or let criticism derail their focus. Because they've lived through invisibility, they've learned that their value isn't tied to recognition. They can step into the light when necessary, and just as easily step back into darkness, disappearing on their own terms. This training is brutal because it requires patience and humility. Being ignored or mocked stings deeply, but God uses that sting to strip away the ego's hunger for attention. It forces Sigma males to anchor their worth internally, not externally. They become their own source of validation, their own audience, their own measure of success. When fame eventually comes, and it often does for disruptors and visionaries, it doesn't cage them. Instead, they carry it lightly, like a tool rather than a trophy. They can drop it whenever they choose, retreating from the noise without fear or regret. The spotlight doesn't define them. They define their relationship with it. This mastery over fame is what separates true leaders from entertainers. God doesn't elevate Sigma males to be idols. He elevates them to be masters of their own destiny, untethered by the illusions that trap so many others. And that ability, to rise without craving, to shine without clinging, is one of the most powerful tests of all. Only those forged in divine obscurity can be trusted with divine authority. That's the hidden law behind why Sigma males are tested harder, longer, and more painfully than most. Their path isn't about quick success or mass acceptance. It's a brutal, soul-deep refinement process that strips away illusions, burns off ego, and extracts every ounce of weakness. And for what? So they can be trusted with weight most men would collapse under, influence that could corrupt lesser minds. Missions that can't afford emotional instability or spiritual compromise. God doesn't elevate Sigma males to flaunt them. He hides them, humbles them, and hammers them into something this world isn't ready for. Weapons wrapped in wisdom, leaders who walk alone but carry nations in their silence. The delay isn't punishment. It's protection. It's calibration. It's God saying, not yet. You're too important to be rushed. Most people want elevation for visibility, but Sigma males are being prepared for impact, and that's far more dangerous. Elevation without testing creates idols who crack under pressure. But Sigma males, they're being groomed for the opposite. They're meant to be immovable, unbribable, and unpredictable. The systems they'll shake aren't ready yet. The enemies they'll face are still watching, still underestimating them. That's part of the strategy. Let them sleep on the ghost until the ghost becomes thunder. Every betrayal, every season of obscurity, every lonely walk without applause, it's all part of a divine setup. Not to break them, but to break what's in them that could be bought, seduced, or swayed. And once that's gone, what remains is a man who doesn't move for validation, doesn't flinch in isolation, and doesn't bow to anything but purpose. So if you're a Sigma male walking through fire right now, understand this. You're not being delayed, you're being sharpened, you're not being forgotten, you're being hidden. And when the time comes, you won't rise for the crowd, you'll rise for the mission. Quiet, precise, unstoppable. Because in a world full of noise, God raises Sigma males not to echo, but to recalibrate the frequency of everything. If this message hit deeper than just your screen, if you felt it in your gut like it was meant for you, then don't just scroll on. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next time we drop something this real, this raw, and this unfiltered. Like the video if you're walking your own silent war and you know exactly what it means to be tested in the dark. Drop a comment below. What part of this spoke to your current season the loudest? Let's build a space where Sigma minds sharpen each other. And if you know a fellow Sigma, or someone who's walking through fire and doesn't even realize why, share this with them. You might be giving them the clarity they didn't know they needed. This isn't just content. This is confirmation. Welcome to the circle. Let's rise, quietly but powerfully.